You're the father of your own life and you already know it. But this video is going to reinforce that idea.
Yeah. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumit Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today I want to explain to you guys the idea of dad frame, okay? Now, I don't want you to think of this as weird or incestuous or this kind of weird, vague idea, right? But this is for the men, and I really want you to understand this, okay? You are a father to the world, okay? You are taking care of everybody, right? Like they're your sons or your daughters. And once you understand that frame, it puts you in a very high vibration, and also you're coming from a sense of value. When you are speaking to people, specifically to women, and you're keeping this dad frame alive, you understand that, you know, it's like daddy's home. You know, I've come from a long day of work, and I'm here to take control of things. I'm here to, you know, really make things happen and be the king of my kingdom. Once you understand that, there's nothing really that can get in your way that sabotages that frame. So I would say this is the strongest frame in the world. If you're a younger kid, you can still keep that idea that you imagine that you're an older, refined gentleman, right? You imagine that you're older than you are, and you keep that vibe with you, even if you're like, I don't know, 16, 17, right? You can still keep that dad frame alive. In the sense that you have things under control, you got your shit together, right? Basically, that's what the vibe is, right? You understand that, okay, I've got everything together. Like, you don't need to help me, right? I've got everything under control, right? It's all gonna be fine. It's all gonna be okay. And that's the idea of the frame. So I want you to really understand this. Let's say a girl is freaking out and they're having a temper tantrum, and you come along and you're like, hey, someone's had a bit too much sugar. Someone's a little bit hyper, okay? That's that vibe, okay? Now let's say you're getting ready and your girl like takes like an hour to get ready, right? You're like, hey, listen, I'm gonna head out. If you wanna leave with me, you can, and I'm not gonna wait for you, okay? I'm telling you once, I'm putting my foot down. That's dad frame, okay? That understanding that you are not gonna tolerate any BS. You are going to go forward with your mission and what you really believe in, okay? Now, this is very ultimately powerful. When you can really understand this frame, you understand the nature of reality almost, in a sense. Because we are here, again, to be fathers, right? And a father is someone who's progressed their genes onto the next generation. This understanding that there is this trust in the progeny, right? The understanding that, okay, your genes are going to be passed on to the next generation. As a father, now, I'm not a father. I can't speak from the state that I know what being a father is like. Obviously, there's certain people who have that mentality of being an actual father, and they can speak on this idea. However, what I've noticed is when I keep that dad frame alive with me, I don't feel stifled. I don't feel like I'm out of control. I don't feel like I'm at the hands of somebody else's power. Right? I am the king of my kingdom, like I said. I'm the father of my nation. I'm the father of my tribe. I'm the father of this reality. So I'm here to be in this dad frame, understanding the dad frame has nothing to do with dad bod, right? You don't need to have a dad bod to have a dad frame. Or you don't need to have a dad mentality and make dad jokes to have a dad frame, right? That's not what I'm saying. Dad frame is just this ultimate understanding that you're in control of your own reality, right? You are the man. If you guys can ultimately embody that feeling of dad frame and understand that, okay, wow, there is actually a real deep understanding to this thing, right? This is not just a open idea where I'm just trying to think of things to say and like I'm trying to be in a specific way to appear cool to the environment. No, it's none of that. Dad frame is this understanding. It's a very deep understanding. It's a very genetic understanding because people are going to be reacting to you based on how you step into this frame and be the dad of your own reality, okay? Now, what does a father do? A father takes care of the household. A father understands that there are certain things that you tolerate and you don't tolerate, right? A father has a certain set of boundaries, a set of values, a set of rules, a set of ethics and morals, right? And really start to establish a couple of boundaries here, okay? Okay, this is the rules. If you go outside of the rules, you're gonna be punished, right? You're going to be punished. There's going to be consequences. So once you really set those boundaries and you understand that, okay, firm boundaries, and you understand that you come in with this frame of the world, this frame of reality, look, I'm your father. And you treat your father with respect, don't you? Like, it's this autonomous understanding that you are the independent sole provider of your own existence, of your own life. So ultimately, it's this understanding that you are going to reparent yourself, right? If you're a young man right now and you're listening to this video, you want to understand that, okay, I've got to be a father to my own life. Daddy's home, right? It's that vibe, okay? It's that understanding that, okay, I'm here right now. Listen, I've got it under control. You don't need to worry about anything, okay? What are you worrying about? What are you like complaining about right now? And it's such a powerful vibe that I've noticed that it permeates into other areas of your life. It doesn't necessarily need to only equate to relationships or health or business or all these areas, right? It permeates, meaning it's learning from osmosis. It's taking the strongest fathers of the planet, because what's happening is the nucleus family is breaking down, right? There's no more good male role models that we can look towards. Right? When I started to look towards a male role model, I saw Will Smith, and then he saw that he got cheated on by Jada, and that completely crumbled me, right? At that point, I was like, man, look, I used to look up to Will Smith, now I don't. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, after that event, maybe I still have some level of respect for him, but he looked like a muted reflection of a man after that happened to him, okay? So this understanding that a woman can crumble you and make you lower and like ruin your value, like that completely baffles me in that understanding, okay? Like, hey, you're here to hold your own. You're here to be the leader. You're here to be a representative of the male population. Like, if you are crumbling yourself and making yourself lower, and like the tall poppy gets cut and all of this kind of stuff, look, you're being smaller than you actually are. Whereas you're actually a big, magnanimous energy that can entirely swallow the entire world, right? Like, that's that energy of the dad frame. It's like, hey, I understand. You're my son, you're my son, you're my son, you're also my son. Right? It's like being the leader of a cult or being the leader of a religion, right? Those cult leaders, they understand that, okay, these people are my sons, right? And I know that sounds a little bit condescending or pretentious or whatever you want to say, because cults have a bad rap, right? Jim Jones and that freaking like thing where they drank Kool-Aid and they all killed each other, right? These bad examples of cults. But if you really look at cult leaders, you'll start to understand this mentality of dad frame a lot better. Because what they're ultimately doing is they're coming across a sense of ethics and an understanding that we all need to belong here on this planet, okay? So there's a sense of kinship that if you are there to protect your cousin or a random stranger, you're going to protect your cousin. And this is where nepotism also links to that, right? So this understanding that, hey, if they're in my bloodline, if they're in my lineage, I'm going to protect them, right? So in a sense, you want to pretend that in this frame, you have a connection to the lineage of the people in your tribe and the people in your group, people you want to connect with, and you want them to be a part of your tribe. It's like you're a father to them. And you come in as that dad frame, you as that leader, and even in your relationship, right? Why did this whole daddy trend start, right? Where women started calling men daddy. Now, some would say it's the Oedipus complex and things like that, but it goes much deeper than that, okay? It's not this kind of thing that you think it is. That's the thing, right? You want to really break this down beyond what the cultural scope is showing us in terms of what is really going on, right? So understand that if you are here to truly be a representative of this dad frame, you are there to not tolerate a bunch of BS when like someone is like, you know, throwing a temper tantrum or acting like an immature child. You're there to excuse them. You're there to be like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, okay, you missed the date. Fine. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, I've got shit to do. You know, I've got things to do. You know, and that mentality completely unstabilizes people who aren't used to that energy, right? But a lot of people, what happens is they don't get a lot of masculine energy growing up, right? A lot of fathers, what happens is they go isolated into their own world. And that's what happens with the masculine energy. It's like almost like a Zen master type of energy where they go off into their own world, right? Why do guys play so many video games and read newspapers and like they sort of isolate and go into their own internal worlds, right? That's the kind of the masculine energy, is like that container energy of presence where they don't want to deal with the situation at hand. They kind of want to avoid it and go into their own internal documentation of what's going on, right? And that's what I've noticed is that a lot of weak men, let's say, they suppress They agitate themselves by just not going into the problem. They avoid the situations. They'll escape the situations. You know, they want that Zen monk energy of just completely being silent. That silence. They want that silence, right? That's the male energy, is what it wants. It doesn't want the mind to wrap up stories and be in the logic. It doesn't really want that, right? I've noticed that the masculine energy wants that silence and wants that frame. Now, you'll notice this, right? Daughters who speak with their fathers, they'll be very good listeners, the fathers, right? They'll be very good listeners to their daughters. Like, the daughters will say, oh, this happened at school, this thing happened. And as a father, you know, you're going to listen to your daughter and be like, oh, that's great, honey. And that's so cool. Tell me more of what happened. But you also want to make sure that she's safe, right? She'll be like, oh, who is this guy? You know, tell me more about him, right? He seems like a friend, but tell me more about him. I want to make sure that you're safe. That's the mentality that I'm talking about, okay, guys? So why does this get you in the flow state as a man? Because you're coming from that protective mechanism of like, hey, I want to make sure that people around me are safe. I want to make sure that everyone's getting along. I want to make sure that, you know, let's say that you're hosting a barbecue as a man, right? You make sure that, okay, there's some vegetarians here, so I'm going to also cook some, you know, vegetables. I'm going to put it on a skewer and I'm going to cook some veggies along for the people so everyone feels accepted, so everyone gets along, right? Now, certain identifications of the father and how it's morphed is we see society and we see all these lazy dads or like Homer Simpson type. We see all these examples of culture of fatherhood and they don't vibe, right? You see all these sitcoms and you see these very confused, weak men that are effeminate and they don't take control of their own lives. They're always in some kind of like premise of getting out of control or having their lives being controlled by their wives, or like they're constantly like being barricaded in terms of like, oh, why are you watching sports? Or like all of these mentalities and culture that are bringing up this idea of the male being like this guy who just sits and watches TV, right? As he's trying to think of things to do. Look, you got to change that around. You got to understand that you got to get active and proactive in your life again, right? Like you were before you got into a relationship, like you were before you started to have a wife and kids, right? That mentality of the dad frame doesn't just start when you have a kid. And that's what you got to understand. Of course, the kid helps because it's like this understanding that, hey, I have someone to take care of now, right? And that puts my energy into that, and there's this compassionate and tender understanding, but also this protective understanding of the provider who wants to get their resources out into the next. You know, they want their offspring to be protected and their genes to pass on, obviously, right? At the same time, you get this imagery of the deadbeat dad, and you get this imagery of the guy who doesn't give to his family or doesn't give back, and this understanding of just like, hey, I'm selfish, I'm here to do my own thing, like I'm here to live my own life, I'm not here to give to my family anymore, like whatever they can do, they can do. But that understanding isn't really aligning with dad frame. Like dad frame is this complete solid understanding that you have a foundation, you have a base, you have an understanding that, look, listen, right, you're not going to mess around with me right now because this is what I believe in. And this is what I'm going to say to you, right? Once you really embody that feeling, and look, again, I know this might sound weird. I know this might come off in a strange way in this video, but I really want you to embody this and understand this, because ultimately this is going to help you so much in your life that there's no question that it's going to help you, right? Because ultimately everybody is wired to be fathers and mothers, right? If you understand it. So dad theory is this understanding that you're going to be more of a dad as you grow older. Even if you're not in a relationship, you have a family, you're still going to take care of more responsibilities. You're going to have this understanding that, okay, you're going to go into adulthood where you become responsible, and then you're going to let go slowly and surrender to the process where other people take care of you again like a baby. So you come into the world as a baby, and then you leave as an old man where other people take care of you like a baby again. A lot of, men get hate. It's like whenever men get this understanding of they're going to do something different, let's say they dye their hair or they get a cool car, always, the instance that comes up is like, oh, you have a midlife crisis, right? It doesn't have to be a crisis. Look, men could like cool things. Men could want to be badass. Men could want to feel youthful and young and like that they're getting it and they're moving forward in life. Like Look, that has nothing to do with that idea of you have a crisis going on, right? A crisis is, again, that's a cultural norm that we have to really work with and start to understand that it has nothing to do with you. You might actually have a crisis, but it's not always the case, okay? Don't just go with the conventional wisdom. Don't just go with what the norm is saying. But again, as I'm saying, the fatherhood, like the whole stereotype of the fatherhood, like analogy breaking down is very problematic, okay? We need to start to become fathers again in our own life. What does that mean? You got to be responsible. You got to take care of what you have. You got to take care of what you need and understand that you're coming into this world like, hey, I'm here to control it. Honey, I'm home, right? That mentality of just like, hey, I'm coming in here. I'm taking control. I'm making things happen. I'm doing what's necessary. I know what I want. I'm going to go after what I want. And I understand that, yeah, hey, like no little girl energy is gonna like skew me off of my path, right? And that's the understanding, right? Dad frame is about this understanding that, okay, listen, I'm here to provide protection as a man, right? I have safety, I have resources, I have things that I'm gonna provide for you, right? If you want it, cool. If you don't want it, get out of here, right? That's that mentality. And when you come into the world with that mentality, you become all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful. I'm telling you this. Because what do we call God, right? The Holy Father. Why do we call him the Holy Father? Because he is in control. Okay? This understanding that there is a sentiment of that, there is a taking care nature of that. Right? This understanding of like, we call people like Father John or Father Henry or whatever the name is, right? That we give people. That understanding that they're a father, you know, they have a responsibility. They have an understanding that I'm here to take care of my life and I'm here to take care of this world around me, okay? So don't settle. Don't be like, okay, she's yelling again, and so I'm just gonna go with it. It's like, no. Imagine a little girl is like yelling at you like that, right? You'll be like, hey, calm down. It's gonna be fine. Why are you yelling at me right now? Why are you disrespecting me right now? Right? A father, if their daughter is going to start yelling at them, they're going to step up and they're going to have the leeway, the understanding, the permission slip where they're going to step in and be like, yo, this is my values. This is what I stand for. I don't want you to start yelling at me because that's going to become a habit for you. And this is going to move on to other areas of your life because your parents, I mean, listen, dad energy is what represents your masculine energy in your life. Take it as it is. If your dad was a very effeminate man or something like that, like you're going to be effeminate, right? However your father was, you're going to be that way unless you choose to really train yourself and start to advance yourself in the understanding of this thing, right? It goes very, very deep and it's not this very, you know, simple idea. Look at these crows eating this food finally. Let me just remind you guys that step into your dad frame, step into your true power and your true nature because you deserve it. Because you have this understanding that you are the captain of your own soul, okay, in Leviticus. Like really start to understand that and then start to adopt this dad frame, not just for yourself, but for all the areas in your life so that you can really start to enhance and prioritize the different areas where other people aren't taking you for granted, but you are being the best that you can be. Have an amazing day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it today. Boom.